Today on Debt Free in 30, we discuss a topic we have never discussed before, the wealth effect. What is it and why does it matter to you? Ted is here to discuss it, starting right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Ted, welcome back. You are familiar with OpenAI ChatGPT?
Who?
No idea. So this is this...
That's a computer thing, right?
Yeah, it's an online AI thing. It just came out. I think it was open to the public in December of 2020. And you can type in a question and it gives you an answer. And it's really cool because if you want to debug the computer code you're writing, it'll give you the new code. I mean, it's all sorts of cool things. So I actually tried it. I typed in, who is Doug Hoyes? And it says, oh, he's a licensed insolvency trustee with Hoyes Michalos. And it gave me all these. But then it also said that I was a member of the board of directors of the local hospital and I was a member of the board of directors of the local hockey team, none of which was true. So
did it list your book?
It did not list my book
What
either.
the hell's wrong with this software?
Exactly. But
I'm going to try it.
But then over the next week or two, they disabled the ability to be typing in a specific person's name unless there's somebody famous, because I guess people would use it to troll you or something like that.
But you are famous.
I know. So I don't get it.
Well, infamous.
So it could be. So what I did was I went on and said, what is the wealth effect?
Okay.
And so here's what the computer told me. It said the wealth effect is an economic phenomena that refers to the changes in consumer spending and saving that result from changes in wealth. Okay, that kind of makes sense.
Okay.
So when people feel wealthier, they're more likely to spend money because they feel more financially secure and believe that they have more disposable income. Conversely, that means the opposite.
Right.
When people feel less wealthy, they're more likely to save money as they feel less financially secure and want to build up their savings in case of unexpected expenses or a downturn in the economy. Very interesting. So, okay, that's what the computer AI says. How would you define the wealth effect in simple terms?
So when you feel like you are wealthier, you're worth more, you are willing to spend more.
Pretty much as simple as that.
Right.
So let's put it to the test,
Okay.
shall we? I did some research.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate. You're familiar with real estate, right?
Yes.
Between roughly 2009 and early in 2022, so roughly a year ago, real estate went up. Just kept going up and up and up and up and up.
Right.
Over a 13-year period, depending on which real estate market you're looking at, Toronto or wherever, prices of many houses almost tripled.
Okay.
That's pretty amazing.
Right.
So if you have owned a house for many years and it kept going up and up and up, how would the wealth effect kick in there then?
Right. Well, you think of yourself as being wealthier because now you've got this asset that's worth more. And so I'm worth more. I can spend more. Maybe you get a nicer car. You do renovations to the house, all sorts of stuff.
Beautiful.
Right.
Now, you're familiar with the Bank of Canada study, I think it was from like 20 years ago, where they talked about the marginal propensity to consume, which is what you just talked about. But
how much are you willing to spend?
Yeah. And so what they said was, and I'll put a link in the show notes on YouTube. I assume by now everybody's already clicked the like button. Have you, people? Come on, click the like button. So in the notes on YouTube, I'll put a link to this study. They said that there is almost 6 cents per dollar in changes in your marginal propensity to consume for a $1 increase in housing wealth. So if your house goes up by $1, I'm willing to increase my spending by 5.7 cents is what that said.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is the stock market doesn't work quite the same. So if I own some shares on the stock market, my marginal propensity to consume only goes up for every dollar my stocks go up by half a cent.
Right.
Way less than for real estate. And now if we look at what's happened on the stock market, well, if you go same period, February 2009 to February 2022, stock market was up 170%. And in fact, if you look just between March 2020 and March 2022, so that 2-year period right at the bottom from the bottom of the pandemic, it was up 85%. Okay. So a lot of people, hey, I'm going to spend more. Why do you think that if my house goes up by $1, I'm willing to increase my spending by 6 cents, but if my stocks go up by $1, I'm only willing to increase my spending by half a cent?
Well, because people view a house and stocks as different things, right? Your house is it's a solid, tangible asset. It's not going anywhere. You wake up every morning and you're in your house. And so when it goes up in value, you're pretty sure it's going to stay up in value. Everybody believes house prices never go down. Whereas the stock market, if you've got money invested there, well, it's a transitory investment. The money isn't there probably long term. It's in there, you know it's going to go up and down. It fluctuates a lot more. So you're a lot as confident that when it goes up, it's going to stay up because we know it goes down.
Yeah, I think you're right. Transitory and volatility would be the two big numbers there. So house prices, well, other than in 2022, have been on a long upward track for many, many years, whereas the stock market up, down, up, down, up, down. So just because my stocks went up doesn't mean I feel like I'm going to, I've got all this extra wealth. So you already kind of alluded to this earlier. So my house has gone up in value over many years. What are the kinds of things then that I would do with that extra money?
Well, and so view your house as this biggest thing that you own. It's your greatest investment probably. And so when it goes up in value, you're willing to spend money enhancing or improving that investment. So it's not that your house goes up in value and you say, well, I'm going to start, giving the kids ballet lessons or piano lessons or something. It's, no, let's do that renovation. Let's, when I'm replacing my car, maybe I'm going to get a nicer car this time because I feel I'm worth it on that next category up, that sort of thing.
Well, and you might actually spend money on ballet lessons too. Who knows?
You might.
Now, here's the problem. Here's the problem, Ted Michalos.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I feel wealthier does not mean I have more cash flow.
Correct.
This is the problem. So if my house doubles in value, I don't have any more cash for the ballet lessons and the new car and all the rest of it. Now, I'm going to give you a hint to the answer to this next question I'm going to ask you. The title of this show is Debt Free in 30. We talk about debt here. So in real life, what happens when I feel wealthier?
So I feel wealthier. I'm going to spend more, but as you just said, I don't have any more cash. Well, so the money's got to come from someplace, so I start accessing credit. First, I'll use the credit that I have, and then because my assets are now worth so much more, I might even apply for more credit. And so whenever you use credit, it becomes debt. And there you go. Now we're tying into the debt-free.
There you go. We got the word debt in there. Fantastic. So I go and I get a HELOC.
Right.
I get a second mortgage. But then I also go down the rabbit hole and I get, I can get credit cards and all the rest of it.
You're simply willing to spend more because you feel like you are worth more. And the risk here, of course, is that you're spending, you're incurring debt as opposed to spending cash.
So walk me through the cycle then. So my house price goes up.
Yep. You feel good about that. That's good. House has gone up. And so
then I borrow more.
Right. I'm willing to spend more. So now your credit score is going up.
Oh, my credit score is higher.
Which means they're going to
lend me more money. This is fantastic.
It's a cycle. Right?
And so then I can borrow more.
Right.
Okay. So this all sounds fantastic to me. My house is worth more. Yep. I'm able to borrow more. And as a result, my credit score is even better. So I can borrow more and probably borrow at good rates because my credit score is so good.
So up to last spring, this was a great world to be living in because of that. Because interest rates were basically money was free, right? And what's happened since last spring? Interest rates have begun to climb. And we predicted that in our last, we viewed all that stuff in December, right?
Yep. Yeah, and we covered that in our year-end show as well. Yeah, so mortgage rates have gone from being 0 to being 3, 4, 5, 6%, whatever it is, depending on where you are.
HELOCs are at 6 something now.
Yeah, HELOCs are a lot more. So there's your problem with this wonderful theory, and that's higher interest rates. So as I see it, there's the triple whammy here, right? The three, you can come up with a fancier way to say it than that. Higher interest rates,
right?
Which means what I am paying on the money I'm borrowing is up.
The cost to use that money that you borrowed is now more. It's more expensive.
Higher debt service costs. But then we're also now, and we're recording this in 2023, in early 2023, my assets are worth less.
Correct. There's been a correction in the housing market, and because of the recession that I think you and I both agree we're already in, that correction is going to increase.
And if my house price goes down and I'm using my house as collateral, I now have less borrowing capacity.
Right. The security on the debt is lower.
That ain't good.
At some point, the bank will be unhappy with you.
And then the other thing that's happening is inflation.
Right. And everything else costs more.
And specifically consumer price inflation.
Right.
Food, so everything else, which means I have less disposable income.
Yep.
So this is like three bad things.
Well, it's a trifecta of disaster.
The trifecta of disaster. That's what we'll call this show. So interest rates go up, cost me more to service it. My asset prices are going down, which means I got less borrowing capacity. And then everything else I'm spending money on is more expensive. I've got less money to spend. So on a macro level, and again, you just alluded to it. Right. What does that mean for the Canadian economy?
Welcome to the recession.
Welcome to the recession. And I agree with you. I think we're already in a recession. On our year-end podcast, which I think was released on January 1st, but we both said that this is the year 2023 when they'll officially declare the recession.
Bad things are going to happen.
I think it's going to happen around March or April. Maybe it won't be till the fall. I don't know. But I think, and the only reason they haven't done it yet is because unemployment looks low.
Right.
Now, I can go on a huge tangent, which I won't about
Let's
that.
not do that.
But the unemployment rate counts how many people are unemployed. It's
how many people are willing, able to work,
right,
versus how many are unemployed.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we did talk about the labor force participation rate. We won't get into that here. But it's done by integers. You're either a person or you're not. It's 1 or 0. Right. So is there a difference in the unemployment statistics between someone working 40 hours a week and 35 hours a week? Nope. It's one person.
Somebody working 3 part-time jobs versus 1 job? Nope.
So that's why I think even though the unemployment rate looks good, we're in a bit of a mess. Now, using the Bank of Canada's marginal propensity to consume of almost 6 cents when house prices go up. If house prices were to drop 30% from the peak, and the peak was around February, March of 2022, and they're probably already down by more than 10% in many markets already.
I would think so.
Consumption, if you go work through all the math, would fall by around 5%, and that would be a hit of roughly 2.5% of annual GDP growth. So that sure sounds like a recession to me.
Right.
And that's just the wealth effect from lower house prices. You add in the deleveraging due to higher interest rates, and it's even worse. So that's the impact on the economy. And in our year-end show, we did talk about the savings rate.
Right.
And what did we say about the savings rate?
Except for that 1 month that was a strange aberration, it's basically dropped.
Yeah. So it was going up from 1960 to 1980, and then from 1980 until just before the pandemic, it was going down, so that we got to pretty much 0 savings.
Right.
And then when the pandemic lockdowns hit, it spiked way up. For all the reasons you talked about earlier, I feel unsure about the future. I'm going to save money.
I'm afraid.
And then since the lockdowns have ended, the savings rate has been dropping. It's bouncing around. It's still higher than what it was before, but it's certainly gone down. Right. So I think everything we're talking about, the wealth effect, is supported by the numbers when you look at it. So, okay, we don't care about the economy and GDP and all the rest of it. This is a show about actual people. So what does this wealth effect thing mean for the average person who's watching us today?
So it becomes a somewhat self-fulfilling prophecy. If you feel like you have more wealth, you're richer, you spend more. And when you start to feel poorer, you spend less. And so when you spend less, well, okay, that means that, so per store sales are down, so that the sales of the stores are generating less income. They need less employees. I mean, it's a ripple effect, right? It's self-fulfilling. You stop spending money, so everybody stops spending money, and we're all looking at a layoff. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of how the cycle works, right? So when things are going good, when I feel wealthier, I'm spending more money, which generates more jobs. More people are buying houses, which drives up the price. So I feel even wealthier.
It's a multiplier effect.
But then when things go the other way,
the multiplier works in reverse.
It's exactly the opposite. So we get into a recession. There's higher unemployment, which, granted, as we're recording this, is not evident. So
the numbers aren't dead. That's not saying that.
This may be, a prediction that I'm totally wrong on again. But I believe that higher unemployment is to come. And unfortunately, the stats in Canada are not as detailed as in the U.S. because in the U.S. you can see they got the
segment.
Yeah, well, they've got the establishment survey and the household survey. One of them counts jobs, the other one counts people.
Right.
So the person who has 3 part-time jobs, that makes the unemployment rate look a lot better than the person who just has 1. So we can't see it. But I'm of the view that we are seeing that unemployment has already started to increase here.
Right.
And again, if you look at the number of hours worked and all those sorts of things, I think that filters through. So higher unemployment, like you said, I got less money now.
Right. And even even if it hasn't affected your job directly, you're less confident, so you're going to spend less anyway. It's just human nature. If you're not sure about the future, then you're going to start setting money aside, or at least not committing to any new purchases.
Which is exactly why we saw the savings rate go way up,
right,
to like all-time highs, certainly since before you and I were born,
right,
during the pandemic. So, okay, if I start, and how would you judge the mood of people right now? So forget about real math.
Right.
Let's just throw out our opinions here, because this is a podcast. That's what we do.
Well, if you want to have an experiment, go to the water cooler sometime today and say, geez, I was shopping on the weekend and it cost me an extra $100 for my groceries. And everybody standing around you is going to go, oh yeah, I don't know. I just can't afford it anymore. It's all just driving you crazy.
I was actually at the water cooler before we started, but there was nobody else there.
Were you at the grocery store?
No.
I was yesterday.
And things are definitely more expensive. Like
it's $5 for a head of lettuce these days.
Sheesh. Well, I'm glad I'm not.
You have a greenhouse.
Glad I'm not a vegetarian. So what do you do then when letters is $5 a
right.
head?
Well, so the thing everybody has to remember is there's what the whole society does, what the culture does, what the mob does, versus what you should do for yourself. And so usually what you should do for yourself is what's in your own best interest, as opposed to what everybody else is doing. So if you look at, well, let's use the house, because that's the example everybody likes to. The house has gone up in value. That doesn't mean you should start spending more money, because your house going up in value hasn't put any more cash in your pocket. So if you are conservative and simply spend based on your income, the amount of cash you actually have, you won't get into these kinds of troubles. It's so easy to say, it's hard to do.
So if you were the leader of the world, well, let's say the leader of Canada, then you want everyone spending as much as they can.
You do, because of the multiplier effect. I spend $1, then the business that got it, they spend 80 cents of it, then the next guy 60 cents of it, and it's a huge effect. It keeps people working. There's demand. It's good for the economy.
The velocity of money.
There you go.
Someday we'll do a show on that too. And it does appear that the velocity of money has slowed down. So,
but if you're an individual,
it's the exact opposite.
Right.
So lots of debt. Well, more debt in the economy is better for the economy because I've borrowed money and I can buy stuff.
Right.
But for an individual, it's the opposite. More debt allows you to buy stuff, but now you got all this debt too.
Well, more debt allows you to buy more stuff today, but you got to pay for it tomorrow. So you're trading your consumption tomorrow for consumption today.
And so do you think that higher interest rates impact the wealth effect?
Oh, certainly. But not to the same effect as the increased value in your house. So there's inflation across the board. So everything is going up 5%. Well, my house went up 5%. The cost of living have gone up 5%. I might not actually feel any poorer because I've got my house and I think I'm better off. You're not, because now you got 5% less cash, which means you can't afford to do all the things that you used to do, not to the same extent, but people don't see it that way.
Well, and I would disagree about inflation. I think what we have, I think the fancy term they've made up now is called crossflation.
Okay.
Which means inflation is different in different segments. So we know that the price of houses over the last 10 months has come down.
Right.
And yet the price of groceries has gone up. Well, those are two different inflation rates then.
The price of rental housing probably hasn't gone down in that same period.
There's a lag.
Right.
Now, eventually, if the real estate market goes down 30%, then you would think that people who rent out their condo would be charging 30% less in rent.
Right.
You would think.
Or at some point, the people that are renting can now afford to buy again.
Right. And now, of course, if the interest rate has gone up, then when I'm renting out my condo, it doesn't really matter what I paid for it. What matters is my borrowing costs, my servicing costs. So those may have gone up. But I think we're going to see things like, okay, the economy's reopened. Everyone wants to travel somewhere.
Right.
So we know that during the holiday season in 2022, the airports were a mess.
It was just a nightmare.
It was a nightmare.
Yep.
And why? Well, because finally we can go somewhere. So has the cost of an airplane ticket gone down? Well, no.
Exact opposite. It's gone through the roof.
It's gone way up.
Yep.
But if in the middle of 2020 you wanted to get a contractor to do that renovation on your house, couldn't get them.
Yeah, you couldn't find one.
Now, my understanding was to hire a contractor, well, there was a 2-year wait time back then. Whereas now when you call them, well, it's a 6-month wait time.
Right.
And it may be that by the end of this year, it's like we can be there tomorrow.
Right.
So you got different things moving in different areas. So real estate prices going down, stock market not going up at the moment, but other costs are going down or are going up, food, things like that. So the wealth effect is kind of a weird thing because my house price is going down, but all the other costs are going up. That certainly doesn't make me feel wealthier.
Right.
Like it.
Yeah. And it actually, we need a better name than that. Whoever came up with the wealth effect was really focusing on the upside because wealth implies good fortune, good things are happening. It doesn't properly address the fact that your wealth can go down. So the negative wealth effect is just as real, but it's different conversation.
It's kind of like the difference between the word credit and the word debt.
Right.
One has a positive connotation. I'm giving you credit for a job.
Credit
well done.
is good. Debt is bad.
But they're the same thing, really. It's two sides of the same coin.
Right.
So, okay, back to people then. We've discussed the economy enough. So somebody is watching this right now. Hello. glad you're watching us. Did I already tell them to click the button? I think I did.
You did that, yep. You haven't asked for sponsors so far.
Oh, yeah. If you want to sponsor the show, probably you're not a real estate person because we said prices are going down. So the individual person then, we already know that if you were the prime minister, you'd want people to continue spending and you'd say everything is great and it's all transitory, get as much money as you can, interest rates are going to come down, whatever. But for the individual person who you're sitting across the table from, what is your advice?
Live within your means. Right. So we were talking about this earlier. Turns out the barber was right. If you live within your means, you make sure that you can afford to pay for exactly what you're spending every month. You're never going to get in trouble.
You're talking about David Chilton, the wealthy barber, not your actual barber. Hello, David. If you want to be on the show, you know how to reach us. So live within your means. Do you mean live within my means as I perceive them today, yes, or as I think they're going to be?
So now we're into the perception issue, right? And so that's what the whole wealth effect is built on, your perception that you're wealthy. And I'm telling you not to base it on perception, base it on real numbers.
So, okay, how would you do that then? Are you talking about making a budget? Are you like...
Sure. Cash is king. That's the other mantra that we want everybody to memorize.
Cash is king.
So it doesn't matter if you've got $5 million worth of equity in your house, if you're still making minimum wage doing the fry guy at McDonald's. Right? So you can afford, this is how much money I've coming in every month, $2,000, $3,000, whatever the number is. That's all you can afford to spend. And if you're smart, you'll spend a little bit less than that.
Yeah, which is easier said than done because prices have gone up by 10% and my wages haven't gone up by 10%.
Right.
So what am I supposed to do here?
Yep. You got to reassess how you're spending your money as opposed to immediately taking on debt, which may be the short-term solution. Like your expenses can go up overnight. Everybody admits that. Your income, it's much harder to get it to increase because you've got to convince your employer to either pay you more or you've got to find new employment or new skill set. So that takes time.
Yeah, I guess if my car breaks down, I need a new thing.
I got to have it fixed.
What did I have to do on my car? A rod? What was it?
The tie rods?
Tie rod. I had a tie rod problem.
You know what's interesting? My nephew drives the same car, tie rod problem, and they can't find them. They're out of stock. But anyway.
Well, they fixed mine. Yep. But they only fixed one of them. I assume there's more than one of them.
There's one on each side.
But not four. There's only two.
Right, front end.
Okay. It's a front end thing, apparently. So we're going to start doing auto talk here for people who drive 12-year-old cars like I do.
Shop 101.
Shop 101. So I assume I'm going to need one on the other side at some point.
It depends on why the first one went, but anyway.
Which is why when I drive with my steering wheel, I'm always pointing.
Did you hit a curb?
Oh, yeah. I hit curbs all the time.
A big pothole?
I'm not a great potholes all the time.
Right.
So if my tie rod breaks, and I don't have the cash in the bank to fix a tie rod,
then you got to use credit.
Got to use my credit card.
Right.
Because if I don't fix that tie rod, then I can't drive the car.
Can't get to work.
Can't make money.
Right.
So obviously the correct answer is, well, you should have a savings account. You should have money sit there in an emergency fund and all the rest of it. Right. And that would be fantastic if
But as we said way back in the show, the saving rates have basically been next to zero for the last 30 years. So
right.
There's no safety net.
And I don't think it's because people are lazy and evil. I think, well, it costs a lot of money to live.
And they've been convinced to spend every dollar they make.
Right. So what we're trying to do is shift the narrative a bit and say, okay, whatever you can do to keep your expenses lower, right, do it. And if you can throw some money into a savings account, all the better. Now, of course, if you already have debt, then that debt is becoming increasingly expensive.
That's right. Then having debt complicates things because you've got not only your living expenses, but the cost of servicing the debt. And you have no control whatsoever over interest rates. Again, if you had a mortgage 2 years ago, it might have been at 1.5%. If you're renewing right now, it's probably at 4.5%. That's a hell of a difference to your monthly payment.
Yeah. Plus everything else.
Right.
If your rent has gone up, your groceries, everything.
$5 head of lettuce.
There you go. So just don't eat lettuce. There's no nutrition in lettuce. Why would you be buying lettuce?
It's crunchy.
And so obviously the commercial we give on many of these shows is if you have too much debt, well then that's when you need to talk to a licensed insolvency trustee.
Right.
We can work out a proposal where we make a deal with your creditors to pay back something towards what you owe, but not everything.
Right.
And that, I think, will be an increasing likelihood for a lot of people. I think in our year-end prediction show, we both predicted that the number of consumer insolvencies will be going up
significantly
fairly
in 2023. Yep.
And it'll be interesting to see, is it a bigger increase in bankruptcies or proposals, and how does that all work?
Right.
But we'll see how that plays out for the year. So, okay, so cash is king, live within your means, and reduce your debt now. Those are kind of the big things.
Yep.
And again, easier said than done.
A lot easier said
but
than
at
done.
least it's something to shoot for. So, and I guess my concluding comment would be, you need to know yourself.
Right.
So are you the kind of person, like most people, who are influenced by the wealth effect?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just human nature, right? That's just psychology. So if you knew that 10 years from now, you were the recipient of a trust fund and you were going to get $1 million, would that change how you live today?
I suppose if you did the math, you could probably spend $700,000 or $800,000 of that now and just.
And that's right. And, am I going to, go to school and get another degree when I know that in 10 years' time I'm going to have a lot of money? Yeah, maybe not.
Right.
If I believe, and this is where perception and reality are two different things. If I perceive that my house is going to keep going up in value, my stocks are going to go up in value,
right,
then I don't have to worry so much about saving, because
tomorrow I'm going to be worth more than today.
Tomorrow I'll be worth more, and it's going to be there. But as you said, wealth can be transitory,
right?
Which means it goes up, it goes down. So
anything that goes up eventually comes down.
And we don't want to end this on a depressing note, which is that, hey, the negative wealth effect, as you've called it. When things are going good, we feel great, but real estate's going down, my stocks are going down, prices are going up. So how do you keep from getting depressed about that? It just goes back to the whole transitory thing that, what goes up will come down, but will come back up again?
Focus on the things that you have control over. So if you're living on how much you make, not necessarily being influenced on how much the stock market's going up and down or your house is going up and down, you're less likely to get in trouble.
Yeah, I like that. Focus on what you have control over. So, okay, my costs of living have gone up. What can I do to reduce my cost of living? Do I need to move to a cheaper place? Do I need to get a roommate?
I'm sure you're not buying lettuce anymore.
I'm not buying lettuce. That's for sure. Not when I think it's more like $7 for a head. But
no, I was in the grocery store.
You were there. It was $5. Okay. So, and obviously that's what people are doing. Okay, instead of buying, chicken, I'm buying, Kraft Dinner or something.
Whatever,
which I happen to like. Hey, that'd be a good sponsor for this show. If anybody knows the Kraft Dinner people. So, yeah, you have to, I agree, keep your expenses as low as possible, but also realize that the future does change, and therefore having a bit of savings is not a bad thing. So there you go. That is the solution. And again, if you got more debt than you can handle, reach out to us and we'll give you our thoughts on that. So there you go. That is the wealth effect, or the negative wealth effect, which perhaps will be the story of 2023. That is our show for today. I already told you to hit all the buttons, so please do all that. If you're watching on YouTube, I will put a link in the show notes to what we've talked about. If you're listening to this show on the audio version of the podcast, which is where most people listen to it, then again, please make sure you've subscribed, leave us a comment, leave a review, whatever you can do there. That certainly helps us. Thank you for listening. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.